Morbid Facts, Part 269. Ever since they were little kids, twins June and Jennifer Gibbons refused to speak to anyone other than each other. By the time they turned 18, they'd committed multiple criminal offenses and were sent to a high-security mental hospital in 1981. Years prior, they made a long-standing agreement that if one of them ever died, the other must begin to speak and attempt to live a normal life. While at the mental hospital, they decided it was now necessary for one of them to die, and Jennifer agreed to make the sacrifice. In March of 1993, Jennifer was rushed to the hospital where she died of a sudden inflammation of the heart. There was no evidence of drugs or poisoning in her system. It was as if she'd just died out of nowhere. Afterwards, June said she was finally liberated from her sister and was eventually released from the asylum. She now talks to people and has lived a relatively normal life ever since. Sir Adrian Carton Dewey-Art was a British soldier who fought in both World Wars, during which he was shot 8 different times, survived 2 plane crashes, tunneled out of a prisoner camp, and bit off his own fingers when a doctor refused to amputate them. When later asked about his crazy wartime experiences, he said, "Frankly, I enjoyed the war." American man Hugh Redman was a World War II paratrooper who later spied on communists in China for the CIA. He was captured in 1951 and endured 19 years of brutal torture since he refused to reveal his true identity. Most likely murdered by his captors, his ashes were sent home in 1970 and he was given a headstone that read, "His country above all else." In 2010, Ozzy Osbourne had his genome sequenced to understand how it was possible for him to still be alive after abusing his body for so many years. Researchers found mutations related to addiction, metabolism, and Ozzy's Neanderthal ancestors. In fact, he carries several 100,000 genetic variants that have never been seen before by scientists. Meaning if he wasn't a literal mutant, he likely would have died decades ago. There have been at least 9 different studies on the DARE program, and all of them agree that it either does nothing or only worsens the problem. Gary Webb was an investigative journalist who was one of the first to report on the CIA's involvement in the cocaine trade. A few years later, in 2004, Gary was found dead in his home with 2 gunshot wounds to the head. In 2001, a lion, tiger, and bear cub were all rescued from a drug dealer's basement in Atlanta. Usually as animals get older, they grow apart and become aggressive towards other species. But these 3 remained close and even lived in the same habitat for over 15 years. There's a tribe in India that's learned how to train the roots of fig trees to grow natural suspension bridges. These bridges can span over 100 feet and last up to 600 years. In 1932, Dr. Eric Salomon faked a broken arm so that he could sneak a camera in his cast to photograph the Supreme Court. It's one of only 2 existing photos of the U.S. Supreme Court in session. In the 1930s, a flute player had a pet lyrebird that mimicked his music. Eventually, he released the bird into the wild, but fragments of his music were passed down by generations of lyrebirds. Some of his music is even still present in their songs today. In the 1990s, a Tennessee man built the world's largest treehouse after claiming that God told him to. The structure had 5 stories, 80 rooms, and took the man 12 years to complete. But in 2019, the entire treehouse burned down in less than 15 minutes under unknown circumstances. In 2013, a Virginia college kid nearly died after drinking an entire quart of soy sauce on a dare. He now holds the world record for the highest blood sodium level ever recorded without brain damage. The 6 Sick Sheik 6 Sheep Sick is listed by the Guinness Book of World Records as the hardest tongue twister in the world. In 1986, an Indian man set a world record by spending 72 straight hours in a cage filled with 72 of the world's most venomous snakes. He was seeking to spread awareness that snakes don't bite unless provoked. In 2013, 16-year-old Ethan Couch killed 4 people while drunk driving. But he initially wasn't sentenced to any jail time since his attorney argued that he suffered from affluenza, a mental illness caused by growing up with too much money. In ancient Sparta, only 2 groups of people could have their names inscribed on their tombstones: men who died in battle and women who died in childbirth. In 1994, Los Angeles police arrested a man dressed as the Grim Reaper carrying a scythe. He was reported by various nursing homes after staring through patients' windows while wearing the costume. In the year 2000, the charred remains of Mary Lou Morris were found in her burned-out car in Houston, Texas. Only 4 days later, the body of Mary McGinnis Morris was found in her burned-out car in Houston, Texas. Police believe that a hitman killed the wrong Mary Morris and tried to fix it. Stricken with polio in 1952, Paul Alexander has been living in an iron lung for 70 years. He may be the only person left in one since modern technology has created far more practical methods for respiration. But if Paul leaves this machine for even a few minutes, he will stop breathing and almost certainly die. 6 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the sunken battleship USS West Virginia was finally salvaged from the ocean floor. On that ship, a calendar was found inside of an airtight room where 3 sailors had marked off 16 days until they died. In 2013, a Frenchman on a business trip died of a heart attack while having sex with a stranger. A French court later ruled that it was a workplace accident and that his wife and family were entitled to compensation. Many say he did it for his family. Badasses of history. During a World War II battle with the Soviets, Finnish soldier Imo Koivunen got separated from his unit with no food, water, or weapons. Other than his ski gear and clothing, all he had was the entire methamphetamine supply for his squad of 30 men. Although he'd never tried them before, the soldier decided to take one for some energy, but he accidentally consumed the entire bottle. Over the next few days, Imo skied over 250 miles, survived the blast of a landmine, and grabbed a bird out of the air before eating it raw. When he was finally found and brought to a hospital, the 26-year-old weighed 95 pounds and had a heart rate of 200 beats per minute. Imo became the first documented case of a soldier overdosing on meth during combat, but he survived and lived to 71. If it wasn't for this man, it's possible that none of us would be alive today. In 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis between the US and the Soviet Union, the captain of a Soviet submarine thought they were being shot at by US naval ships and wanted to fire a nuclear torpedo in response. But in order for this to happen, 3 officers on board the submarine had to agree unanimously to fire the nuke. The first 2 men had given their clearance, but Chief of Staff Vasily Arkhipov refused to authorize the launch. The men began arguing, but Arkhipov was a highly respected war hero known for his courage from a previous event. He ultimately convinced the captain to resurface and await new orders from Moscow. Thanks to him, a nuclear war was prevented from breaking out and humans were not made extinct. In 2018, 17-year-old Jordan Turpin called 911 to report that she and her 12 siblings were being abused by their parents. This is sadly rather common, but what police discovered in the Turpin household was far more horrific than anything they'd seen before. The entire house reeked of human excrement, decaying garbage, and dead pets that were scattered throughout the home. Many of the 12 children had been tied to their beds and were covered in bruises and dirt. It was clear that David and Louise Turpin had been torturing their children for years, allowing them to eat just once per day and shower just once per year. They would reportedly often leave food on the table and force their children to stare at it before throwing it away in the trash. This resulted in extreme malnourishment, as their oldest son was 29 years old but weighed just 82 pounds at the time of their rescue. The kids were so clearly abused that a few doctors broke down in tears upon seeing them for the first time. The Turpin parents were handed 12 counts of torture among numerous other charges and were effectively sentenced to life in prison. While filming for Rocky IV, Sylvester Stallone challenged Dolph Lundgren to try to knock him out for real. Lundgren hit him so hard that he was sent to the ICU for 9 days and was lucky to survive. The Cordoba fighting dog was a dog breed that became so aggressive that it was very difficult to breed them, since a pair would often fight to the death rather than mate. This eventually contributed to their extinction before the 20th century. This photo from 1960 shows segregationists harassing 6-year-old Ruby Bridges, the first black child to attend an all-white school. They portrayed her as a doll laying in a coffin to protest her attendance at the school. Chester the Molester was a comic strip by Dwayne Tinsley that featured a pedophile named Chester who was interested in molesting young girls. After producing the comic strip for 13 years, Tinsley was convicted of molesting his teenage daughter Allison over a 5-year span. Huacachina is a small village built around a desert oasis in southwestern Peru. The lake formed naturally from underground aquifers, and many believe its water has therapeutic properties. It only has a population of about 100 people, but thousands of tourists visit each year. In the early 1900s, the city of Cincinnati built a 2-mile-long subway system that was never used and lies completely abandoned to this day. The Lonely Castle in Saudi Arabia is a massive tomb that was cut out of a boulder about 2,000 years ago. The structure was never fully completed, but it stands as an architectural marvel of ancient times. Cosquer Cave in France is a prehistoric cave that can only be reached through an entrance underwater. Only discovered in 1990, the cave has over 200 drawn figures which date back as far as 27,000 years ago. Archaeologists in Scarborough, England discovered 33 ancient deer skulls with eye holes carved into them. They were likely worn as masks about 11,000 years ago, but experts don't know what purpose they served. The Sorceress Kit is a box of trinkets that was discovered in the garden of a house in Pompeii. It's believed to have been used as a toolkit by an ancient fortune teller. The Iron Pagoda in China is an ancient brick temple that was built in the year 1049. It's been through 38 earthquakes, 6 floods, and many other disasters, but still remains standing to this day. This incredible lunar calendar that was discovered in France is estimated to be more than 34,000 years old. It's carved out of bone and provides evidence that prehistoric humans may have been far more astronomically advanced than we'll ever know. In 2008, the extremely rare Kashmir musk deer was spotted for the first time in nearly 60 years in a forest in Afghanistan. The species has been hunted to near extinction mostly due to its valuable scent glands, which can sell for over $20,000 per pound on the black market. This is the pyramid capstone of Amenemhat II, one of the only intact pyramidions in the world. Every Egyptian pyramid used to have a capstone like this one at the top, but nearly all have been stolen or destroyed over the years. On April 18, 1930, the BBC announced that there was no news today, and so they played piano music instead. By 2011, the red-crested tree rat had been extinct for 113 years until it casually appeared on the handrail of an eco-lodge in Colombia. It let researchers photograph it for 2 hours before disappearing into the night, never to be seen again. In 2012, archaeologists in Central Asia found a few fossilized bone fragments estimated to be over 90,000 years old. Genomic sequencing later revealed that they belong to a human that's completely unique from any specimen ever recorded. Her parents were 2 completely different species of human, her mother a Neanderthal and her father a Denisovan. Here's an aerial photograph of an uncontacted tribe in the Amazon rainforest ready to go to battle against a helicopter. This pic shows a Queen's Guard receiving some water outside the Buckingham Palace due to extreme heat. This is a rare and quite juicy New York strip. And finally, we have some colorized footage of the last known Tasmanian tiger Benjamin at the Hobart Zoo in 1936. The species officially went extinct when Benjamin was locked outside of his sleeping quarters on a cold Tasmanian night and froze to death. Former WWE wrestler Chris Benoit is considered to be one of the most talented professional wrestlers of all time. But sadly, his career was tainted when the 40-year-old murdered his wife and son. After multiple tests were conducted, it was revealed that his brain was so damaged from wrestling that he had the brain of an 85-year-old with an advanced form of dementia, likely contributing to his horrific behavior. In 2012, a UK surgeon was fired and convicted of assault after branding his initials into the livers of 2 of his patients. It was only discovered when another surgeon had to perform a corrective surgery on one of the patients. In 2013, Florida man Jeff Bush was sleeping in his bedroom when a sinkhole opened up beneath him and swallowed him whole. His brother heard his screams from across the house and immediately ran over to start digging, but Jeff's body was never recovered. Some people are born with an extra hole in their ear called a preauricular pit. It's connected to an unusual sinus tract underneath the skin, which many scientists believe might be an evolutionary remnant of gills. If you're a big fan of natural bridge caverns, you can purchase this home in San Antonio, Texas for $875,000. The 2.5-acre property comes with 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and a well-maintained natural cavern in the backyard. Here's a pic of veteran racehorse Morbid wearing the world's only Harris tweed suit designed for a horse. Skirt steak. The world's only upside-down traffic light can be found in the Tippery Hill neighborhood of Syracuse, New York. It was made this way because in the early 1920s, the area was heavily populated by the Irish. These locals didn't want red, a color of the British flag, to be higher up than the Irish green. So they kept smashing the lights until a special one was finally made. Morbidly wholesome facts. While filming for Sleepy Hollow, Johnny Depp became very close with his co-star, a one-eyed horse named Goldeneye. When he heard Goldeneye was going to be euthanized after filming, Johnny didn't hesitate to adopt the horse himself. When Volvo invented the 3-point seatbelt in 1959, they easily could have patented the design and made millions in profit. But they decided to make it free for all competitors and likely saved millions of lives instead. John Cena holds the Make-A-Wish Foundation record for the most wishes granted at 650. No other celebrity has even granted more than 300. For 20 straight years, a male stork named Klepitan migrated over 5,000 miles per year to be with his partner Milena, who lost the ability to fly after being shot by a hunter. They would spend every mating season together and ended up having over 40 babies. Frank Lentini was a circus performer in the early 1900s who was born with a parasitic twin. This resulted in him having 3 legs, 4 feet, 16 toes, and yes, 2 sets of functioning genitals. He married, had 4 kids, and lived to the age of 78. Here's a clip of Admiral Jeremiah Denton blinking the word torture in Morse code while he was held captive in the Vietnam War. He was being filmed for Vietnamese propaganda, but US naval intelligence was able to decipher his message. In 1979, gold miners in Alaska stumbled upon this perfectly preserved steppe bison that's right around 50,000 years old. It was so incredibly intact that researchers decided to take a chunk of muscle from its neck and cook it into a meal. It was described as tough like beef jerky, but quite delicious aside from the muddy aftertaste. Chandler Cruz was born with a form of dwarfism that resulted in her being only 3'6" by the time she was a grown adult. But thanks to advancements in biotechnology, she underwent a life-changing surgery that allowed her to grow 2 extra feet and extended her arms by 4 inches. One day in 1989, about 2 million people from Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia formed a human chain that stretched over 420 miles. They wanted to show their collective desire to escape the Soviet Union and the poverty and suffering that came with communism. After an American Civil War battle in 1862, a group of wounded soldiers in the mud were saved by a mysterious glow that appeared on their wounds. In 2001, 2 teenagers won an international science fair by discovering that their bodies were so cold that it created the perfect conditions for a form of bioluminescent bacteria. This phenomenon, called angel's glow, ultimately destroyed the bad bacteria that would have killed them and allowed their wounds to heal instead. This extremely rare illusion is an example of a fata morgana. It's a mirage that causes the object to appear distorted due to bending rays of light. It can happen to any large distant object, including boats, buildings, and islands. It's also believed that this illusion created the myth of the Flying Dutchman. In 2012, French beekeepers couldn't solve the mystery of the blue and green colored honey in their beehives. After months of investigating, it was discovered that the bees were visiting a local factory that produces M&Ms. The Bajau people of Southeast Asia are often considered sea nomads. They have no homes, money, or nationalities, and they spend 60% of their life underwater. They can go spearfishing at depths greater than 200 feet without any scuba gear and have even developed much larger spleens than the average human to help them survive underwater. If your skin ever starts turning yellow like the photo on the left, you should see a doctor as soon as possible. This man had a condition called jaundice, which can indicate serious problems with the liver. These photos were taken before and after the man received a liver transplant. Before the murder of Shinzo Abe, the most recent political assassination in Japan happened in 1960. Leader of the Socialist Party, Inajiro Asanuma, was attacked by a 17-year-old wielding a sword. The brutal murder was captured live on television and broadcasted to millions across Japan. A group of researchers in Africa once hid a speaker near a herd of elephants and played a recording of one of their herd members who had died. The dead elephant's family suddenly went wild calling for him, and his daughter cried out for days afterward. The researchers later vowed to never conduct such an inhumane experiment again. In the only novel that Edgar Allan Poe ever wrote, 4 crewmen get lost at sea and end up eating the cabin boy named Richard Parker. In real life, 46 years later, an English yacht sank and the remaining 4 crewmen resorted to eating the cabin boy to survive. That boy's name was Richard Parker. A Bosnian couple began cheating on each other when they both started talking to another person online. When both groups decided to meet in person, the couple realized they'd been cheating on each other with each other. A family photo under the northern lights became a 1 in a million shot when they also captured a shooting star in the background. Ancient ruler Mithridates was so paranoid of being poisoned that he routinely drank toxins throughout his life to build up his immunity. When he was finally captured by the Romans, he tried to kill himself with poison but failed because he was completely immune. When Eminem relapsed in 2008, he called Elton John for advice on how to handle the superstar lifestyle. Elton ended up calling him every day for the next 18 months and became a significant part of his recovery. When disabled man Alan Parton was hit by a car, his service dog Endel immediately dragged him into the recovery position. The dog then pushed his cell phone into his hand, put a blanket over him, and ran to a nearby hospital and barked until someone helped. The man ended up surviving with only minor injuries. Harriet Tubman suffered a traumatic brain injury as a child, which often caused her to slip into sleep-like states. During these sleeps, she would have vivid dreams, which she interpreted as messages from God. They would inspire her to devote her life to freeing Southern slaves through the Underground Railroad. This photo shows the Undertaker looking down at medical staff after chokeslamming Mick Foley through the roof of Hell in a Cell. The fall was completely unplanned and left Foley with multiple dislocations, bruised ribs, and internal bleeding. The Undertaker was certain he'd just killed the man, but Foley got up and even finished the match. The band Fleetwood Mac highly considered thanking their drug dealer in the credits of their most popular album, Rumors. They only decided against it after their dealer was murdered. In 2010, a commercial plane crash in Africa killed everyone on board except for one passenger, who was left with an insane story to tell his rescuers. Apparently, a man smuggled a crocodile on board, which managed to escape shortly before landing. This made everyone panic and run to one side of the plane at one time, causing it to flip and eventually crash. This devastating photo was taken in India during the Madras famine of 1877. The man is fighting the urge to sleep so that he could protect his family against cannibals. People were so desperate for food that your own neighbor could snatch up your child to eat them at any given time. In 2010, Dave Grohl was admitted to the hospital due to an overdose. He apparently consumed too much caffeine from coffee and thought he was about to die after experiencing severe chest pains. Also in 2010, a homeless man named Hugo saved a woman from a knife attack in New York City. He was stabbed while trying to help but continued chasing the attacker before collapsing to his wounds. Security cams captured more than 20 people walking past and staring at him, but no one offered to help. He was found dead on the sidewalk more than an hour after the attack. In 2016, brothers Bob and James Stockless both won the lottery on the same day with randomized numbers. But one was way happier than the other since Bob won $7 while his brother James took home over $290 million. In 1950, a Nebraska church exploded 5 minutes after choir practice was supposed to start. But miraculously, all 15 members of the choir were late that day for different reasons, and not a single person was hurt. When actor-comedian Red Fox was dying of a heart attack while on set, nobody offered to help him. This was because everyone thought it was nothing more than the fake heart attack act he was famous for. A Chinese woman attending her son's wedding was quickly sent to tears when she noticed a birthmark on the bride's hand. Turns out the bride was her long-lost daughter, whom she'd been trying to find for over 20 years. Badasses of history. 38-year-old Johnny Kim has been a Navy SEAL, a trained Harvard doctor, and was selected to become the first Korean American to go to space. Many people refer to him as the real-life Johnny Sins. American pilot Thomas Fitzpatrick once stole an airplane from New Jersey and landed it in front of a bar in Manhattan to continue drinking. 2 years later, someone at the bar didn't believe his story, so he did it again. Alan Turing was the man who broke the Nazi Enigma code during World War II and is widely considered to be the father of artificial intelligence. He's estimated to have shortened the war by 2 years and to have saved at least 14 million lives. Turing was also an Olympic-level runner who developed a new field of biology out of his fascination with daisies. But he was later charged with being a homosexual and was forced to undergo chemical castration. This is the clearest and most recent photo ever taken on the surface of Venus. It was captured by a Soviet space probe in 1982, just before it was destroyed by the dense 900-degree atmosphere of the planet. This extremely rare calico lobster was caught in Maine just last month. Experts say only about 1 in every 30 million lobsters is colored this way. The fairy tale village of Heathorn in the Netherlands has no roads or cars. The only method of transportation is by boat. This here's a yummy, delicious, rare steak. Wall? In 2017, scientists began a global search to find a partner for Jeremy, an extremely rare left-coiled garden snail. Since his shell coiled in the opposite direction of most snails, his family jewels couldn't align with others. 2 candidates were eventually found out of millions of snails, but they proceeded to mate with each other instead of poor Jeremy, a blue whale that sings at such high frequencies that he's unable to communicate with other whales. Nicknamed 52 Blue, his calls have been heard since the 1980s but never receive a response. Waist chopping was a popular execution method in ancient China that involved sawing the body clean in half. But it was banned in 1734 after a Chinese official was cut in half and still managed to write the Chinese word for awful 7 times in his own blood. In 2005, one sheep decided to jump off a cliff, causing 1,500 others to follow. But only the first 450 actually died, since the rest of the falls were cushioned by the dead bodies below. The Great Whiskey Fire of Dublin killed 13 people in 1875, but none of them died from the actual fire. They were all killed by alcohol poisoning after drinking too much of the whiskey pouring through the streets. In 2007, children going to see The Last Mimsy at a movie theater in Florida were accidentally shown The Hills Have Eyes 2 instead, the opening scene of which features a chained naked woman giving birth to a deformed baby. The theater apologized for the trauma and gave all the parents free tickets. In 1971, a Texas state representative introduced a bill that honored a serial killer for his work in population control. He did this simply to prove that most of his colleagues passed bills without even reading them. And he was correct, since it was passed unanimously. When the Nazi Party held its first book burning, one of the works destroyed was a 1921 play by Heinrich Heine. It contained the famous phrase, "Where they burn books, they will also, in the end, burn people." In August of 2001, actor James Woods reported 4 suspicious men on his flight, but authorities didn't take his claims seriously. Turns out there were 4 of the hijackers who had crashed into the World Trade Center on 9/11, and this was one of their test runs. In 1987, a British woman purchased a ring from a flea market for $5, thinking it was simply a nice-looking artificial stone. But 33 years later, she discovered that it was actually a genuine 26-carat diamond ring worth $960,000. During the Crimean War over 160 years ago, a French and Russian soldier fired at each other and their bullets miraculously collided. The series Breaking Bad has 62 episodes in total. The 62nd element on the periodic table is samarium, a substance typically used to treat lung cancer. One of the most renowned vasectomy doctors in all of Texas is named Dr. Dick Chop. Packers fan Jim Becker regularly donated blood in order to afford tickets for games. Years later, he found out that he had a potentially deadly disease that could only be prevented through giving blood. So without even knowing it, he was saving his own life by donating blood the entire time. McCartney decided not to tell his wife Linda that her cancer progressed and had become terminal. He didn't think it would do her any good if she knew, so she continued riding her horse until the day before she died. These were just some of the wedding rings that were taken from victims of Buchenwald concentration camp during the Holocaust. It's estimated that around 100,000 Japanese people vanish without a trace every year. Many of these cases are people simply trying to save their honor after a divorce, job loss, or a failed exam. After the 1947 murder of Elizabeth Short, aka Black Dahlia, reporters told her mother that Elizabeth had just taken first place in a beauty contest. Once they had enough information from her for their story, they informed Mrs. Short that her daughter had actually been viciously murdered. Lydia Fairchild gave birth to 2 kids whose DNA didn't match her own. Prosecutors pressed to take the kids away and forced her third birth to be closely monitored. When the third child again didn't match up with her DNA, she was charged with benefits fraud until it was discovered that she actually carried 2 completely different sets of DNA. This means the 3 kids technically belonged to her unborn twin sister. In the late 1800s, a baboon was employed as a signalman by a South African railroad. He was paid 20 cents per day and a half bottle of beer per week. During his 9-year career, he never once made a mistake. A boy born with just 2% of his brain completely defied doctors' predictions after it grew back to 80% the average size. Doctors had told the parents to terminate the pregnancy not once, not twice, but 5 times. He celebrated his 10th birthday earlier this year. Since the 1980s, blues musician Daryl Davis has convinced more than 200 members to leave the Ku Klux Klan. Since the age of 10, he always pondered the question, "Why do you hate me when you know nothing about me?" Davis fights hate with love by simply sitting down with members of the Klan and having a genuine conversation with them, many of whom have simply never spoken with a black man in their entire life. An Australian farmer couldn't attend his aunt's funeral, so he laid out grain in the shape of a heart so that she could see it from the sky. Humpback whales have been known to risk their own lives to protect other animals. There have been many documented cases of humpbacks actively seeking out orca whales and interfering with their attempts to hunt prey, sometimes even carrying the prey to safety. Researchers remain baffled as to why the whales would put themselves in such danger when it gives them nothing in return. In 2016, Glenda Blackwell bought a $10 scratch-off ticket to prove to her gambling husband that they were a total waste of money. Fortunately, she failed to prove her point since the ticket ended up being a $1 million jackpot winner. In 2017, a group of undercover cops in Detroit who were posing as drug dealers tried to arrest another group of undercover cops who were posing as drug buyers. In 2001, Jason and Jenny Cairns Lawrence went on vacation in New York City when the World Trade Center was struck on 9/11. 4 years later, in 2005, they went on vacation in London when 4 bombers attacked the London bus network, killing 52 people. Then in 2008, they were in Mumbai when once again the city was attacked by 10 terrorists who killed nearly 200 people. All 3 tragedies were the worst terrorist attacks in history for each country. And now Jason and Jenny just stay home.